My name is Dr. Lonnie Pope, and the lesson today is called Stick with Encouragement. And when I have an opportunity to talk about or encourage people or teach, preach, whatever on encouragement, it's kind of like throwing a bear rabbit in a briar patch. I am happy. And so I love to encourage people. I love to be encouraged by people. When I was 9 years old, about 9 years old, I was in Stark, Florida, and I had a teacher. I loved this teacher. Among other things, she taught us music. And we were going through a series of Stephen Foster songs. And this woman said one day, she said, "There's someone in here just like Stephen Foster. He just is a daydreamer, and he loves music, and he's just like Stephen Foster." And I remember thinking before she said anything, I would love to be that person. And she said, "His name is Lonnie Pope." That encouragement changed my life. As a matter of fact, at the age of about 14, I became a professional musician. I went on to be a minister of music in a church. I, with some other people, owned 2 recording companies, one in Nashville and one in Macon, Georgia. We had several hit records. I have written songs. I have written musicals, dramas. So that encouragement just changed my whole life. And I'll tell you something, encouragement works. Encouragement changes lives, and encouragement makes us better. As a matter of fact, this weekend, I went to a Pope family reunion, and I love my Pope family, and they love me, and we like each other. And I had several people encourage me just over the weekend, Friday and Saturday. About 5 or 6 of my relatives said to me, "Lonnie, have you lost weight?" And I'll tell you something, I've been chubby since college, and you can imagine how this makes me feel. Just such great encouragement. Had one of them say, "Lonnie, you look good." And then I had another one say, "Lonnie," and she's my same age. It's the wife of a first cousin, and she said, "Lonnie, for our group, me and you're the best looking of the group." And of course, I felt real good about that. I just love encouragement. I want to tell you about the Apostle Paul and John Mark. But let me start with John Mark. Barnabas encouraged John Mark. And let me tell you his background. First of all, John Mark had a lot of weaknesses. And let me tell you some of them. In the Gospel of Mark, he's probably that nameless young man in there who somebody grabbed a hold of him and it pulled some of his clothes off. And he started running because Jesus had been arrested. So here he is. He's not very brave. And the second thing is he started on the first missionary journey with Paul and Barnabas, and he got out there, and it wasn't very long where he says, "Hey man, I've had enough of this, I'm going home." And so the other thing is that in his young life, you see that it was very difficult for him to stay on task. But Barnabas encouraged him. And when Barnabas encouraged him, and Mark grew up, got a little older, what we see is tremendous person in the Gospels. John Mark wrote the Gospel of Mark. Isn't that wonderful? Here's this young man, had weaknesses and all, but yet when he got older, he writes the Gospel of Mark. And he was an assistant to 3 of the best missionaries ever. His mother and him had a house church in Jerusalem, and he became persistent, even though he made a lot of mistakes. And folks, that's what encouragement will do. Encouragement not only works, it changes lives. When we look at the lesson, and by the way, the lesson is based on Acts 9:26 through 28 and 11:21 through 26. And the key verse is found in Acts 11, verse 23. It says, "When he," talking about Barnabas, "came and had seen the grace of God, he was glad and encouraged them all, that with purpose of heart they should continue with the Lord." Now, there are 2 other encouraging verses that we need to look at. One is found in that 1 Thessalonians 3, verse 2. It says, "And sent Timothy, our brother and minister of God, and our fellow laborer in the gospel of Christ to establish you and encourage you concerning your faith. And one of the most critical verses on encouragement is found in 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 11. Therefore, comfort each other and edify or encourage one another just as you are doing. In other words, you're doing it anyway, but I'll remind you to keep on encouraging one another. And by the way, that's a command. That's exactly what we are to do in the church today. And I'll tell you something, if we encourage one another, we're going to have better relationships. When we look at the lesson, what we find out is that the main point of this lesson is encouragement strengthens relationships. And when we look at Barnabas, he's not only an encourager, he's also a reconciler and an evangelist. So let's look at the lesson today. We look at Acts chapter 9, verses 26 through 28. This is what we see about Barnabas and how he worked. And then Saul had come to Jerusalem. He tried to join the disciples, but they were all afraid of him and did not believe that he was a disciple. Well, let me tell you something about the apostle Saul Paul. He persecuted the church. And I'm sure all these disciples knew that. He persecuted the church. And so they said, well, I don't know whether he's one of us or not. I mean, he could come in here like a spy, and we don't know where we can trust him or not. But you know what? Barnabas took control. And what Barnabas did, we see in verse 27 and 28. But Barnabas took him and brought him to the apostles, and he declared to them how he had seen the Lord on the road, and that he had spoken to him, and how he had preached boldly at Damascus in the name of Jesus. So he was with them at Jerusalem, coming in and going out. In other words, what Barnabas did, he reconciled the disciples and the apostles together with Paul. Isn't that wonderful? You know something? All of us had a past, and we had problems in the past. But here Barnabas says, look, I love you, man. I believe you. And now I'm going to accept you. And I'm going to get all the other people to accept you too. And when we look at the other part of the lesson is Acts chapter 11, verses 21 and 22. We see Barnabas as an evangelist. And let me show you what happens when you encourage people and you're serving the Lord. Let me show you what happens in verse 21, the evangelist. And the hand of the Lord was with them, and a great number believed and turned to the Lord. Then news of these things came to the ears of the church in Jerusalem, and they sent out Barnabas to go as far as Antioch. Man, powerful. Many people were being saved because Barnabas was the type of person that he reconciled everybody together, and he wanted to serve and obey the Lord. And the results was many people were being saved. And Barnabas also, of course, the encourager. When we look at verses 23 through 26, then he came and had seen the grace of God. He was, talking about Barnabas, glad and encouraged them all, not some, but all, that with purpose of heart they should continue with the Lord. Isn't that wonderful? Here's a Barnabas, the great reconciler, the evangelist, the missionary, and the great encourager. And the results, the disciples were first called Christians at Antioch. And a lot of this had to do with Barnabas. We're first called Christians at Antioch. Now, what is the practical application of this lesson? Encouragement strengthens relationships. Encouragement can reconcile disputed parties. Encouragement is blessed by God. Encouragement causes us to work together. Encouragement can cause our relationships to be healthy. Encouragement changes lives for the better. Now, I've got a challenge for you. For the next 30 days, in all your relationships, I don't want you to criticize anybody. I don't want you to talk bad about anybody. I don't want you gossiping about anybody. I don't want you to fuss or fight with any of the people in the relationships. What I want you to do is encourage every single person that you have a relationship with. Now, Harvard University said it takes 66 days to break a habit. It takes 21 days to establish a habit. Now, we're going to go 30 days. In that 30 days, it's my prayer that we all become encouragers. Supposing that we could just get encouragers all over the world. Supposing we got 1,000 encouragers, 10,000 encouragers, 1,000,000 encouragers, 10 million encouragers. It would change the world. So let's all be encouragers. Thank you so much. This is Lonnie Pope. I appreciate you coming our way. Thank you.